Alright, welcome back to our next video in the series of working on this Jeep Liberty. And today we're going to replace the spark plugs. I know it sounds like an easy task, but on a Jeep Liberty there's a couple things that are in the way that you gotta get rid of. So to start, the air box is pulled out. Doesn't have to be. I feel that gives me a lot more room. And these aren't bolted in any way, it's just these rubber grommets. You just literally lift the whole box out. The intake tube to the throttle body is disconnected. Our air temperature sensor has to be disconnected to get the tube off. We took our coolant line off ahead of time because I was trying to get this prepared as much as possible. So we took the coolant line off that comes down here to the radiator, and I just have it hanging up here on the latch. Other than that, everything is still connected. Here is our coil on plugs, or basically these are the ignition coil for a modern vehicle. A 10mm nut, a wire connector, which we may or may not have to take off. We're going to try without taking it off because you always run the risk of breaking these connectors, and if you break one, you're in doo-doo. So, and we're not replacing our boots. We're going to keep these boots here. So you take the nut off and you pull the whole boot up. Access to your spark plug, remove the spark plug, put the new one in, and you're set. So these three are pretty easy to get to on this side. When you get over here on the passenger side, we're going to take this whole coolant tank off and we're going to set it over to the side over here. That'll allow us to get to the third one, which is way back there, our second one, which is right here under the side of the tank, and our front one here we can actually get to pretty easily, so that's not a big issue. I'm going to show you how to do one on the driver's side, and then I'm just going to pick it up when we start doing the passenger side. When you see one, you've seen the procedure to do the rest of them. I'm going to show you about the coolant tank removal and stuff like that. So let's get started. Alright, so we'll get this first one here. I like to use a short extension, just gives me a little bit more room, 10mm, and we're just going to take this nut off. Now obviously I'm holding the camera with one hand and spinning the ratchet with the other. The other thing I do is I keep a magnet handy, just in case these nuts decide to go flying somewhere. And by magnet I'm talking about one that's on like a little stick here. So what I do is I loosen it just about all the way off, and I do it the rest of the way by hand. That way I don't stand a chance of losing it. Take it off, set it to the side somewhere you know where it's at. And then again, it's just a matter of pulling up on the boot. You might have to wiggle it a little bit. And again, I did not disconnect the electrical connector, so we'll see how this goes. Oh, perfect, came right out. No big deal there. And that opens us access to our spark plug. And I just pulled that coolant hose down on my back. Sorry about that. So next is a spark plug socket. Has a little rubber piece in there that grips the spark plug, and we just remove it. Alright, so I can't seem to find my long extension, so I daisy chained two short ones together, and I hope it gives me enough length to get down in there. If not, I'll have to see if I can find another one. Well, I think we're in. Yep. Okay, so then you just take the spark plug out. Sorry about that. It's that coolant hose again. Alright, not quite sure why I'm struggling to get this spark plug out here. Something with my spark plug wrench, I'll have to look into that. So it is loose. I can see the tip of it right there. I wonder if the magnet here will get it. Yep, there we go. Alright. Let's take a look here. So these were Champion spark plugs, and they don't look too bad. They're definitely needed replaced. There's no doubt about that. And so I went with Mopar replacements. But let me get those opened up. We'll take a look at them compared to the old one and go from there. Okay, so these Mopar spark plugs have a number, and this might be what cross-references to NGK. It is 6SPZFR6F11G. Now, it may or may not cross-reference to NGK, I'm not entirely sure. But let's open one of these up, take a look. NGKR, oh, there is a number, I'm sorry, I'm mistaken. ZFR6F11G, that's the number on these. So these are a nickel spark plug, and just comparing to the old one, certainly does look like the gap is open pretty good on these Champions, and what that's attributed to is the electrode wear. If there was an issue in the engine where the piston was coming up and hitting the spark plug, it would push that gap together and close that gap, but that's not the case. So we're going to go ahead and install this new NGK one, and we should be good to go. So the way I install a new spark plug is I take the extension and the spark plug socket without the ratchet, and I just lower carefully into the hole until it bottoms, and then I just turn very lightly to ensure that I'm not cross-threading, and give it just a little bit of a tug, and you'll know if you're starting to thread in. That feels pretty good there. So I'm going to thread it till it's hand tight. Now, hand tight usually happens when the crush washer meets the mounting surface. So right there, I can't turn it anymore by hand. Now we're going to get our socket, and we're going to attach our socket, and we're going to do 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn to crush that washer. So there's a 1/4 turn, there's a 1/2 turn, there's 3/4 turn. So that crush washer should now be set. Pull the socket out, grab your boot, slide the boot back into the hole, line up your mounting stud over here, push down firmly. There it is. Now we get our 10mm nut, tighten that up, and we do that for the 5 remaining spark plugs we have to change. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that coolant tank removal, and that'll be the end. Alright, all the driver's side spark plugs have been changed. Just a little note, I did have to disconnect the connectors on the middle one and the back one. The front one was fine. The middle one and the back one do not have enough slack in the wiring to be able to just pull the whole thing out without disconnecting. I also was able to change the front one on the passenger side without any issue. So now we're going to go ahead and disconnect this coolant tank, which is very simple. 2 10mm nuts, one over here, one over here. When you take those off, the whole tank should be loose, and you just kind of position it where you want it. I'm going to try and set the camera on a tripod here and record this part so you guys can see this part in real time. Maybe hard to see exactly what's going on, but you should be able to get the general idea. I know the lighting's not the greatest. Okay, there's one nut. There's two nuts. Okay, so now the whole tank is loose. Just pull it forward. Set it off to the side. Now I try to set it up like that because remember I took this line off here and just don't want anything to leak out. So that's about your safest bet. Now I'm going to pick up the tripod here so there may be some noise. Hopefully you can see in there. We have full access to the second and third spark plug on the passenger side. So you go ahead and replace those like you did the same in the other ones and you're all set. That's all you got to do. Alright, so once you get those back two spark plugs replaced, you can go ahead and reinstall your coolant tank exactly the exact opposite of the way it came off. You got your two 10mm nuts, you tighten them up. This is the line that we had pulled off laying across the front. Let me show you the routing for that. Because I failed to mention that there's a couple of clamps that hold this hose in place that you have to remove in order to get your 10mm nut off of your spark plug boots. So you follow the line down. Here's your first clamp, okay? This is on the back of the throttle body. You pop it out of that clamp, okay? The hose comes down. Let me get a light here, it'll help us out. So the hose comes down right along here. Here's another clamp. Okay, pop it out of there. And these clamps just pop right up off of them 10mm nuts. Follow your line, it comes down here. And here's another one of these clamps. This one I'll show you real quick because it's just right here in front of us. Grab it, pull up. That's all there is to it. When you're going to put it back together, you just push it back on, okay? So then the hose continues to run here to the radiator. So you do need to remove this. It makes it so much easier to get your spark plugs out. And then when you put your coolant tank back on, run the hose, put it in the little clamps, connect it back here, put your hose clamp in place, and it's a done deal. And that is how you replace the spark plugs on the 2006 Jeep Liberty.